On the evening of February 26th, Trayvon Martin, an unarmed 17-year-old African-American student, was confronted, shot, and killed near his home by George Zimmerman, a not-so-friendly neighborhood watch captain. Since Martin's death and the revelation of more details, the case has drawn national outcry and sparked many heated debates over racial tensions, vigilantism, police practices, and gun laws. When the police arrived at the scene, they found a frantic Zimmerman and a now-deceased Martin. Zimmerman claimed Martin had a gun and that he acted in self-defense against Martin. Upon inspecting the body, the police found it did not possess any weapons. Zimmerman was subsequently taken into custody, treated for head injuries, questioned for 5 hours, and then released, as the police were prohibited by law from making an arrest under Florida's Stand Your Ground statute. As news of the case spread, thousands of protesters around the country called for Zimmerman's arrest and a full investigation. 6 weeks after the shooting, amid widespread, intense, and in some cases misleading media coverage, Zimmerman was officially charged with murder. Zimmerman's trial began on June 10, 2013. 1 month later, the jury acquitted Zimmerman of the charges of second-degree murder and manslaughter. But the battle wasn't over yet. For the following 3 years, the U.S. Department of Justice tirelessly investigated Zimmerman on civil rights charges and concluded there was not sufficient evidence to prove that Zimmerman had intentionally violated the civil rights of Martin. In response to his acquittal, Zimmerman said he felt free to speak his opinion without fear of retaliation. Zimmerman criticized the government and President Obama, stating he believed Obama was directly responsible for the inflamed racial tensions surrounding the shooting. Somehow criticizing the current president wasn't the last time Zimmerman made a mockery of himself. In fact, he seems to have developed a nasty habit of popping up on national news due to a controversy surrounding him. On September 9, 2014, Zimmerman was named by police in a road rage incident in which another driver, Matthew Apperson, claimed that Zimmerman followed and threatened him. A few months later, Apperson pushed the ordeal too far and shot at Zimmerman, causing minor facial injuries from flying glass and debris. Zimmerman this time was able to keep his gun holstered and flagged down a police officer who took him to a hospital. Apperson was later jailed and convicted of attempted murder, but that didn't end the saga of Zimmerman's. After losing his job and his home, Zimmerman needed to find a way to recuperate his losses, so he began selling paintings he had made. His first painting of an American flag sold for $100,099.99 on eBay in late December. It was later reported that the American flag painting was copied from a stock image taken from Shutterstock without attribution. Zimmerman also began selling a limited number of prints of a painting of the Confederate battle flag in conjunction with gun seller Andy Hallinan, who was known for announcing that Muslims were not welcome at his store and that it was a Muslim-free store. In December 2015, Zimmerman tweeted 2 photos of a topless woman he claimed was his ex-girlfriend, accusing her of cheating and theft of his firearm and money. In addition to his claims, he included her phone number and email address. Zimmerman's tweet included a statement against Muslims. His tweet read, "She cheated on me with a dirty Muslim. She'll sleep with anyone." In response to people who threatened him online, he would often respond challenging them, saying, "We all know how it ended for the last moron that hit me." On May 11, 2016, after learning that he is virtually unhireable, Zimmerman came up with another flawless cash grab. Auctioning the firearm he used to shoot Martin, Zimmerman wrote that the gun was an American firearm icon, once again attracting controversy. 9 days later, Zimmerman said he accepted a bid of $250,000 for the weapon. Some hope this will mark the final installment of seeing George Zimmerman in the news. We can only hope. Born in Ohio on March 19, 1986, Casey Anthony stepped into the national spotlight after the suspicious disappearance of her daughter, Kaylee. As her story unfolded, which included a tumultuous family life, an array of deceptions, and criminal conduct, many believe she was unquestionably guilty. The jury, however, felt differently due to evidence considered by them to be circumstantial. Anthony was acquitted of the murder charge, but she found herself loathed by the general public. For the first couple of years after her daughter was born, Casey lived with her parents and her fiancé, who acted as the baby's father. In 2008, Casey's mother, Cindy, called into question Casey's suitability, as she believed Casey was too immature and irresponsible to properly provide a healthy environment for Kaylee to grow up in. Casey, offended by such an accusation, left her parents' home after the major argument, taking Kaylee with her. Over the ensuing weeks, Cindy called her daughter to check on Kaylee. Each time, Casey told her the little girl was out with the babysitter, Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. On July 13, 2008, Cindy and her husband, George Anthony, received a letter informing them that Casey's car was in a tow yard. When George went to pick the car up, he found Casey's purse, along with Kaylee's car seat and her toys. George also noticed a strong, terrible smell, similar to that of organic matter decomposing, coming from the trunk. Concerned, Cindy found Casey at the home of her new boyfriend, Tony Lazaro, and brought her home for a long, much-needed discussion. When alone, Casey broke down, telling her mother she left Kaylee with nanny Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez in Orlando on mid-June, and that Gonzalez had kidnapped the toddler. On July 15, 31 days after 2-year-old Kaylee's disappearance, Cindy Anthony reported her missing to the Orange County Sheriff's Office. After questioning Casey, detectives found extreme discrepancies in her signed statement she made about Kaylee's disappearance. Casey's friends and family had never heard of Gonzalez, and detectives later discovered that in fact there was no nanny. Never was. Casey also lied about working for Universal Studios. The series of lies led to her arrest on July 16th. As the search for Kaylee intensified, Casey Anthony came under increasing scrutiny for her actions in the days before Kaylee was reported missing, especially for her partying and recklessly spending on getting a tattoo when she can't even afford to pay rent, let alone the cost to raise a baby. Months later, on December 11, 2008, a meter reader accidentally stumbled into a leaking plastic bag. Upon looking inside, he saw human remains. After contacting police, they realized that the remains were found only a short distance from Anthony's home and confirmed them to be those of 2-year-old Kaylee. In June 2011, 3 years after the reported disappearance of her daughter, Casey's trial began. The prosecution painted a picture of Casey as a promiscuous party girl, unconcerned with her missing daughter, and labeling her responsible for the murder. Casey's defense, however, told a very different story. According to the defense, Kaylee had drowned in the family's pool back on June 16, 2008, and George Anthony, the grandfather, had covered up the death so that Casey wouldn't be charged with child neglect. And they went on to say that George had in fact sexually abused Casey, beginning as early as when she was 8 years old, and even claimed that her brother Lee had made sexual advances toward her as well. George and Lee both denied the allegations. The jury found Casey Anthony not guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated manslaughter, and aggravated child abuse, citing the mostly circumstantial evidence presented. She was, however, found guilty on 4 counts of providing false information to law enforcement authorities, and thus sentenced to 4 years in jail and $4,000 in fines. 2 of the false information counts would later be thrown out in the appeals court. The aftermath of the trial brought about a slew of bills in several states for Kaylee's Law, which would make it a felony for a parent or legal guardian not to report a missing child just like Casey had done. And in 2012, Florida Governor Rick Scott signed the Kaylee's Law bill. Aside from having filed for bankruptcy, being estranged from her parents, and being one of the most hated people in America, Casey now lives as a free woman. Recently, she has even announced that she's had another baby. Brock Turner was a student athlete at Stanford University on January 18, 2015, when he sexually penetrated an intoxicated and unconscious 22-year-old girl with his fingers. Turner was apprehended by 2 Stanford international students from Sweden, who testified they had been walking back to their dorm rooms late into the night when they intervened. They told the courtroom they noticed Turner acting unusually suspicious around a woman who appeared to be unconscious. Suspecting that he may be attempting to violate or harm her, they approached. Turner, upon noticing his new audience, fled from the scene. The 2 men gave chase, apprehending and restraining him until police would arrive to take him into custody. The police arrested Turner on suspicion of attempted rape and penetration with a foreign object. He was released within the same day after his father posted the $150,000 bail. 10 days later, Turner was indicted on 5 charges, 2 for rape, 2 for felony sexual assault, and 1 for attempted rape. He was arraigned on February 2, 2015, pleading not guilty on all 5 charges. After reviewing the results of DNA tests, the 2 rape charges were dropped by prosecutors, and the trial began on March 14, 2016. Within the same month, the trial was concluded, and Turner was convicted on the 3 remaining charges of felony sexual assault. If given the maximum penalty, the convictions would have carried a potential sentence of 14 years in prison. The prosecutors aimed for Turner to spend 6 years in prison, while probation officials had a different idea in mind, and instead recommended a more moderate county jail sentence. On June 2, 2016, Turner was sentenced to spend 6 months confinement in the county jail, to be followed by 3 years of probation. In addition, he was also ordered to register as a sex offender and participate in a sex offender rehabilitation program. In the immediate aftermath of the case, widespread public criticism emerged, accusing the judge of judicial bias in favor of male and class privilege, and demanded his recall of the sentence or his resignation. The Santa Clara County Bar Association and public defenders, however, defended him, noting that the sentence was consistent with similar cases, and therefore Turner's sentence was not given special treatment. The victim impact statement to the court was also widely publicized by international media outlets, which described her suffering in vivid detail, fueling a resurgence of the wider debate regarding the often overlooked epidemic of campus sexual assaults. According to Vice News, the case had become the latest controversial episode in an ongoing debate sweeping the U.S. about rape culture, privilege in the criminal justice system, and campus safety. Nicknamed the Juice, O.J. Simpson was one of the most notable football players of the 70s. He won the Heisman Trophy in 1968 and went on to become one of the greatest running backs in NFL history while playing for the Buffalo Bills and San Francisco 49ers. Simpson's fame was then bolstered by an acting and broadcasting career, which kept him in the public eye even after he had retired from football in 1979. However, amid his moderately successful career as an actor and broadcaster, O.J. Simpson's once bright career was forever marred when he was accused of murdering his former second wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman. Throughout the years, Brown complained repeatedly about her marriage to friends and family members, telling them that O.J. was physically abusive and prone to fits of rage. Up until New Year's Eve of 1989, the couple's abusive relationship was kept out of the limelight until a fight between the two of them broke out at a party, in which he allegedly threatened to kill her, resulting in the police being called. The former football star pleaded no contest to spousal battery. The next day, he brushed off the incident in an interview with ESPN, noting, "We had a fight. We were both guilty. No one was hurt. It was no big deal, and we got on with our life." But Brown decided she'd had enough and filed for divorce in 1992. 2 years later, the bodies of Nicole Brown Simpson and a mutual friend, Ronald Goldman, were found stabbed to death outside of Brown's condominium in Los Angeles' Brentwood area. When evidence led police to suspect O.J. Simpson of the murder, he was ordered to surrender by 11 a.m. on June 17th. Simpson instead chose to vanish, but was tracked down by detectives later in the day when he made a call from his cell phone while driving on the Santa Ana freeway. The police pursued, leading to a nationally televised slow-speed chase that ended when Simpson eventually surrendered voluntarily when he arrived at his Brentwood mansion. Although Simpson was found to be in possession of a gun, his passport, $9,000 in cash, and a disguise, he insisted that he wasn't running. And later, he pleaded absolutely positively 100% not guilty to the murder charges. During his criminal trial, dubbed the Trial of the Century, it was revealed that a glove matching the one found near the dead bodies had also surfaced on Simpson's property, and DNA testing connected O.J. to the bloodstains left behind. However, his legal dream team successfully raised doubts about the handling of the evidence, with O.J.'s lawyer famously dismissing the matching gloves in his closing statements, rhyming, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." On October 3, 1995, the jury returned to announce they found Simpson not guilty of either murder. Despite his acquittal, O.J. Simpson's legal problems were far from over. He was hauled back to court for a civil trial, and in February 1997 he was found liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman in order to pay their families $33.5 million in total for damages. Later, when all other methods to financial recovery failed, Simpson went to the extreme and planned to publish a ghostwritten book called If I Did It, which was a hypothetical retelling of how he would have committed the murders. But after a large public rejection, the publishing deal fell through, and a federal bankruptcy judge awarded the book's rights to the family of Ronald Goldman. The Goldman family added commentary to the work and retitled it If I Did It, Confessions of the Killer, the book. In October 2008, nearly 10 years after the infamous trial, O.J. Simpson finally got what he deserved and was convicted on 12 counts of armed robbery and kidnapping, along with his partner in crime, Clarence Stewart. The two men were found guilty of robbing two sports memorabilia dealers at gunpoint in a Las Vegas hotel room in 2007. Simpson, who was immediately taken into custody, told police he had just been trying to reclaim his possessions. In December 2008, Simpson and Stewart were sentenced to up to 33 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 9 years. On March 3, 1991, African-American Los Angeles taxi driver Rodney King's story was thrusted into the center of discussion on the rising racial tension in the United States when a car chase between him and the LAPD ended in a violent manner. King originally caught the LA police's attention when he was accused of driving while intoxicated. Fearing getting a DUI, King attempted to flee from arrest, but the car chase was brought to a swift and ugly end by the police. The ensuing officers pulled him out of the car and beat him brutally, while amateur cameraman George Holliday caught it all on videotape. The injuries King received as a result were so severe that at some point doctors had believed he had a low chance of surviving. When King later awoke in the hospital, he was greeted with the fact that he'd become a countrywide martyr for police brutality and racial discrimination. With tensions running high, the 4 LAPD officers involved in the beating were charged with criminal offenses, including assault with a deadly weapon. In the trial, the jury was comprised of 10 white people, 1 Hispanic person, and 1 Asian person, and many objected to the fact that there were no African American jurors. After a 3-month trial, the predominantly white jury acquitted the officers, inflaming citizens and sparking the violent, infamous 1992 Los Angeles riots. The riots claimed the lives of over 50 people, injured more than 2,000, and resulted in roughly 9,500 arrests for rioting, looting, and arson, and causing $1 billion in property damage. On the 3rd day of the riots, King made his first public appearance, making his now famous plea, "People, I just want to say, can't we all get along? Can't we all get along?" While the riots continued, the United States Department of Justice seeked their own legal form of justice by filing a federal civil rights charge against the 4 officers, leading to 2 of them being found guilty while the other 2 were acquitted. Fortunately for King, he got his just desserts when he was eventually awarded $3.8 million in the same civil trial for the injuries he sustained. Now, more than 2 decades after being brutally beaten by police officers, King returned to the public eye to talk about the incident and his healing process, which included him forgiving the officers involved. Saying, "I had to learn to forgive. I couldn't sleep at night. I got ulcers. I had to let go, to let God deal with it. No one wants to be mad in their own house. I didn't want to be angry my whole life."